الهيئة العامة للسياحة والآثار. ملتقى السفر والاستثمار السياحي.
Hello, good evening. I'm going to get started now because time is pressing.
أعزائنا الزوار، ستبدأ الآن ورشة عمل بعنوان تحقيق الجودة والربحية للمنشآت السياحية خلال السياحة المستدامة.
My name is Roger Goodacre. As you can see on the bottom left of this slide, I'm chairman of an association called the Tourism Consultants Network. We are the biggest association of specialist tourism consultants in Europe. We have 120 members who are all specialist consultants and who work all over the world. And I have brought 6 of our members to speak at this event this year. I think I'll just wait for this guy to stop.
وستبدأ الآن ورشة عمل بعنوان تطوير جاذبية الوجهات السياحية من خلال تنوع المنتج السياحي بالقاعة رقم 2.
Okay, sorry for that. So if you didn't catch that, my name is Roger Goodacre. I'm chairman of the Tourism Consultants Network. We have 6 speakers here for this event. I am a tourism master planner with a speciality in marketing, tourism marketing. And I have a certain amount of experience in Saudi Arabia. I worked on 6 projects here for the Supreme Commission for Tourism, notably the tourism development master plans for Riyadh, Makkah, and Al-Baha, but those go back about 10 years. Just a few words, my background also was with the British Tourist Authority, the national tourist organisation for Great Britain. I'm going to talk this evening about product differentiation for tourism destinations. In other words, tourism destinations which want to add greater choice of things to do, places to visit and so on, to attract specific markets. When I talk about products, what I mean by a product is anything that you can sell. A tourism experience, a travel package, hotels, these are all the products that make up portfolio of a tourism destination. So it's a piece of technical jargon, but a product has a very wide meaning. What I'm going to do is to speak about 2 specific case studies where 2 destinations have been very successful in introducing new products to attract new markets. One of them is the state of Kerala in India, and the other is the biggest county in England, Yorkshire. Can I ask who has been, if anyone here has been to India? Has anyone been to Kerala? Kerala, it's in the southwest of India. That's good because no one can contradict what I'm going to say. Has anyone been to Yorkshire in England? That's good also. So I'm going to start with Kerala. The new product that they have introduced is on the right, these houseboats. But the problem that many destinations face is that they become over-dependent on one or more traditional products. And their market focus becomes too narrow. They need to broaden the market, attract different segments of the market, and notably, very often they're in search of higher spending visitors. Other reasons are to try to extend the length of the visit, to extend the seasons when visitors are attracted to a country, to make use of possible resources that they've got which haven't been used for a tourism purpose, make better use of their existing resources. And of course, to try to spread the economic benefits of tourism more widely around society. So tourism product diversification is really a key element of when we're planning planning long-term change, a long-term strategic change. In Kerala, the problem that they developed was that they became very focused on beach holidays. In the 1980s, Kerala was a very little-known destination, even in India. It was certainly not known as a tourist destination. It had very limited tourism resources, very limited infrastructure, one or two government-owned hotels, very few professional tourism skills, and a very conservative-minded communist government that was not really interested in trying new ideas. In the late 1980s, there was a change of thinking in the government. Some professionally trained tourism people started to come into the tourist board, and they started to communicate for the first time. They launched their first tourism campaigns, mainly using brochures, printed brochures. There wasn't the internet at the time, of course. And by the mid-1990s, the beach holidays, they found, were very successful, particularly to European visitors and particularly to visitors from the UK. But they were very cheap holidays. They attracted a lot of people because tour operators from the UK started to organize charter flights, filling up an aircraft with 200 or 300 people, paying very cheap rates. And they developed a very low budget tourist market, which in turn spawned the development of very low quality, cheap tourist infrastructure. Lots of budget hotels, what they call these 100 rupee hotels. 100 rupees is about $1.50 or $2 maximum. And what they found after a while was that the average visitor to Kerala was spending no more than $23 a day. Very low contribution to the economy. So in effect, they were spending quite a lot of money to attract a market of people who were bringing very little economic benefit to the region. In 1999, a major development took place when a new director of tourism took over in the tourism ministry. And he was the person, Amitabh Kant is his name, he's very famous in India, who took the decision to make a complete change in Kerala to develop a completely new product that would appeal to a completely new market, and in fact to discourage the existing market that they had built up. Those maps on the right show you where Kerala is, down in the bottom left-hand corner of India. And this is the product that they decided to develop. In Kerala, they have 1,000 kilometers of these, what they call backwaters, which are canals and riverways which snake around the interior of the country. And previously, it's a part of India where they grow the most rice. And so they use these waterways to transport the rice from the fields to the port to export around India. So the new strategy was to target affluent foreign visitors, to actively dissuade the existing low-budget visitor, and to identify the sort of high-quality products that would appeal to these new markets that they were targeting. Specifically, as I said, they wanted to make use of these backwaters. They wanted to exploit their soft culture in terms of dance. In particular, they have a traditional dance in Kerala, which is very spectacular to go and watch. They have another tradition, which is Ayurvedic medicine, a sort of massage, which you can enjoy either as a health treatment or purely as a very pleasant distraction from your holiday. And they also adopted an events strategy, starting to organize a number of annual festivals. So they commissioned a lot of market research on how to rebrand and reposition the destination, identifying what the essence was of Kerala and how to communicate that to the markets that they were interested in. And I'll just go back a second, they adopted a very controversial brand at the time, Kerala, God's Own Country, which created a lot of publicity in India at the time, but in fact turned out to be very successful. So they adopted a number of actions which were key to achieving their success. The first was to ensure that in a communist government, they secured the political and financial support that was essential to carry through a major tourism campaign. And the Minister of Tourism in this communist government turned out to be very supportive, and that was key to this thing being a success. There was a supportive minister and a very active and imaginative director of tourism. The branding, they adopted a very bold approach to branding and repositioning. Kerala had always been thought of as a very backward, uninteresting place. They promoted it as something very special, and there was a lot of skepticism within India when this was done. The government focused on doing what it ought to do, which is facilitating activity, facilitating development of new products, experiences and services, not investing itself in them, but clearing the way for private sector investors. And as I said, they managed to attract investment in the houseboats. The houseboats were converted rice transporters, which they built up into luxury accommodation. They're a fantastic holiday if you get the opportunity. And then they developed these Ayurvedic health treatments, which are both cosmetic and medical. The big advantage of that product is that it is best experienced during the monsoon. And the monsoon, when there is heavy rain, is traditionally a time of year when very few people would come to Kerala. But by putting across the message that taking Ayurvedic treatment during the monsoon is the best time to do it, they managed to create a new season at a completely dead time of year. They also, as I said, they started creating these festivals like this annual boat race using these traditional boats. It's very spectacular. And they encouraged the development of very high quality accommodation to match the type of visitor that they were targeting. So a lot of small boutique hotels, in other words, small luxury hotels were developed, and also homestays. This was the first state in India to start to develop homestays. That is, you go and stay in people's private homes and you have the feeling of being with a family rather than staying impersonally in a hotel where you just provided a service. And all those homestays are carefully monitored, inspected, and have to respect certain standards. That has been a highly successful initiative. Other key aspects of the marketing campaign were developing marketing partnerships with the various stakeholders who are involved and launching what are now very typical traditional marketing activities like road shows and trade fairs. When they did it, it was really for the first time. It was the first time that a state in India had done this sort of activity. Kerala was also the first state in India to launch a biannual workshop. This is going back 20 years. Within a few years, they were attracting 1,000 buyers from 27 different countries, and they were the first state to mount a TV campaign. On the right, you see an example of a traditional fishing net. These fishing nets are said to have come from China several hundred years ago, and they're still there and still used by the fishermen on the coast in Cochin, which is the main seaport. Anyway, the results of this change of strategy and the plans that they put in place were an enormous and sustained growth in visitor numbers, 10% per annum for 11 years, and equally an even higher rise in tourism revenues. In 2005, 1.2 million jobs in the state depended either directly or indirectly on tourism, and it had become the biggest industrial sector in Kerala. As an aside, Kerala was the first state in India to commission a tourism satellite account study. Tourism satellite account is something developed by UNWTO, which is designed to measure the effect of tourism, the spending effect down the value chain, identify where the money is going, and so on. One of the results of this analysis they found was that tourism had a fantastically positive multiplier effect of 2.4 on income and 4.2 on employment. So every dollar spent on tourism was producing so much more spent elsewhere in the economy, and that was a great incentive to private investors to come into the tourist industry. Kerala soon became established as India's premium tourist destination. It won multiple international awards, and it culminated in 2000 in National Geographic Traveller magazine listing Kerala as one of 50 destinations of a lifetime, the only destination in India to enjoy that accolade. So it was being perceived as a higher premium, more desirable place to visit than Rajasthan, Delhi, the Taj Mahal, Calcutta, wherever. The scale of its achievement was enormous. Further results included a very dramatic increase in innovation and entrepreneurship, particularly in the terms of developing niche products. In addition to the houseboats, the river tours, tree houses, homestays that I've mentioned, butterfly tours, tiger trails, monsoon tourism driven principally by Ayurvedic massage, and business and conference tourism followed on in due course. There's much wider community engagement in the whole tourism industry. People were finding that tourism is actually a fantastic way to develop an activity without having to have access to large amounts of capital. There's very low barriers to getting involved in tourism. Another side effect was that the development of these products and the influx of high-spending visitors generated a lot of local awareness and interest in cultural traditions and arts, and stimulated revival of dying art forms. Young people started taking an interest in their traditional arts, and these arts, which have been in danger of disappearing altogether because they are of interest to foreign visitors, suddenly and started generating tourism income. Suddenly they started reawakening local interest, and they've been saved from extinction. The whole question of how a tourism ministry or a tourism board should get involved in developing a product is always a tricky question, and it's often mishandled. But I think what the tourist board in Kerala managed to do with homestays is a good example of how it should be done. These are a couple of examples at different ends of the scale of homestays. One is an old colonial house in Cochin, which is now a bed and breakfast place, and the other one on the bottom right is a little rice farmer's house on one of the waterways, right on the water side, and the bottom left is the sort of food that they serve you. But sorry, I'm having difficulty reading my screen. One of the ways in which the tourism ministry enabled the development of these products was to facilitate easy access to loans from financial institutions. Otherwise, small businesses were finding it very difficult to get the capital they required. They provided the technical guidance and skills training that homestay owners needed, people who had never worked in the hospitality industry before. They provided marketing support and advice, included them in their marketing campaigns. They set up and managed an accreditation system so that there's a certain amount of quality reassurance provided to the customer. And they permitted all the institutions that passed these tests and that were accepted onto the official list of homestays to use the official state Kerala logo and brand. And to enable the marketing of these homestays, they developed a standalone booking website. So that was a good example of how a tourism ministry or tourist board can productively get involved in development of a new product. So the key factors that we can of success that we can draw out of Kerala's experience, I think, are as follows. One, it was all driven by a very strong tourism champion who had a very bold vision and was determined to achieve very clear-cut objectives. It had the consistent support of the politicians in government. There was a very strong, positive, can-do attitude all round. The brand was very clearly identified. The state was very clearly positioned and promoted to the type of visitor that they were hoping to attract. Partnerships were also key. They got a lot of involvement by all the different products owners, the houseboats owners, the hoteliers, the various bus companies, airlines, and so on, all formed partnerships and marketed the destination together. And another key was that they didn't stand still. made sure that the product evolved and changed in response to changing market demand. That's always one of the dangers in a destination. They develop a successful brand, watch it reach popularity, and then it just drops off without being refreshed. In this particular case, in Kerala, they have been very good to respond to the changing world, in particular to demand for greater environmental responsibility. And so now they've introduced various sustainable tourism initiatives, and they've actually changed the focus of the market that they're targeting from the affluent traveller to the alert, what they call the alert independent traveller, which is just a bit of jargon for trying to target people. They would like to have people who come and leave the place in a better state than it was when they arrived. Kerala is one of the best examples in the world of a state successfully managing to change its product base completely. There are now very few backpackers in the destination. All the focus is on these high quality, expensive holidays in the backwaters, but they have managed to carry it off very successfully. My second example is something completely different, and it's not so much a case of a destination changing its products, but introducing a new product, trying to raise its profile, attract a new market. It's the county of Yorkshire, which is the biggest county in England, has 5 million people, has a very strong sense of its own identity within the UK. They're very proud of being Yorkshire people. They speak with a very strong accent. They have all sorts of cultural traditions which they're very proud of, but it's really not very well known outside the UK. It's also a part of the UK which is very much in economic transition. It has a number of big industrial towns where they used to make steel. There's a big tradition of making wool, and they had a lot of mines, most of which have been shut down in the last 30 or 40 years. The northern half of the county is completely different. It's open country, very beautiful, hilly. There's a big coastline, and there's a lot of attractive historic towns. It does also have quite a lot of tourist destinations within the county to have established markets. Most of the people who come to visit these destinations are domestic from within the UK. The number of overnight trips is more than 10 million of domestic, only 1 million foreign visitors. And it's 51% of visitors come for a holiday purpose, 38% are coming to visit their friends and relations, and 9% visit for business purposes. These maps here on the left show you where Yorkshire is, the top right, and how the county is divided. So what they decided last year in 2014, well in fact going back to 2012, was that they would try to attract a major sports event to Yorkshire to try to raise the profile of the county, principally outside the UK, but also inside the UK. And they were very ambitious and decided to try to be the host of the annual biggest cycle race in the world, the Tour de France. Tour de France in the last few years has changed, and it generally now starts outside France for the first 2 or 3 days and then comes into France for the remaining 2.5 weeks. They were fairly clear about the objectives in their campaign. They wanted to generate long-term economic and social benefits, attract both tourism and investment into the county, and inspire participation in cycling and sport, and also showcase some of the what they think of as creativity and enthusiasm in the county. The challenges that they were facing with a very low international awareness of Yorkshire. It's not an established cycle race venue, and in fact, when they went to make their first presentation to the organisers of the Tour de France, no one around the table had heard of Yorkshire. No one had been to Yorkshire. And the problem was that the UK government was giving its official backing to another part of the UK, to Edinburgh in Scotland. So they had a big problem of how to make their case to win this tournament when they were talking to people who didn't know the place that they were promoting. And what they did was to invite the 2 or 3 key organisers over to Yorkshire. They hired a helicopter, took them around by helicopter for half a day, and effectively they sold them the products on this helicopter tour. It's fair to say that also there was a lot of scepticism about the chances of Yorkshire winning this event. But again, the key factors of success here, also similar to what happened in Kerala, was that there was a very strong champion driving this whole initiative. In this case, it was the director of the Welcome to Yorkshire Tourist Board, who was a very persuasive speaker, a very outgoing man, who was able to put the proposition over very convincingly. They planned the whole campaign meticulously. They employed experts at carrying out the various tasks that have to be undertaken for this sort of campaign. They created all partnerships right across the county with all the different participants, whether it's the local councils in each town who would be responsible for upgrading the roads or taking care of security, to the hotel owners, to the people who would be providing food and drink and so on. All of those, they managed to get them singing the same song, get them optimistic, all aiming for the same objective. It is fair to say they were extremely successful in this. There was very widespread enthusiasm. And once Yorkshire had been chosen ahead of Edinburgh, which was a big surprise, then the British government became very supportive and put a lot of money behind the event. What were the key promotional actions that helped to drive this forward? Well, as for the Olympics that took place in the UK in 2012, when the volunteer movement was one of the elements that people most appreciated, in Yorkshire they recruited 8,000 people to act as unpaid volunteers to host people, take care of them, tell them what was going on, tell them where to go, and so on. They printed and distributed 100,000 toolkits to the businesses in Yorkshire, advising them on how they could draw some benefit from this major event. They organised a couple of festivals, a one-week festival immediately before the event, where they managed to draw business people, 2,000 visitors from 25 countries, and of course quite a lot of those stayed on for the start of the race. They also had a 100-day cultural festival as a countdown to the start of the race. And all this generated enormous press, TV and online coverage. The picture you can see here is a very famous cathedral in Yorkshire, the York Minster, with crowds there at the beginning of the race. So what were the results of this campaign? Were equally spectacular and exceeded all the expectations. Along the roads, this is this, believe it or not, there are bicycles going through these crowds here. This is coming to the top of one of the hills on the race. There are 2.3 million spectators alongside the roads over the 2 days. 1.2 million of those were the local residents, and 1.1 million came from other parts of England and from outside the UK. There were 18.6 million people in the UK who saw the event on TV, and more than 300 million around the world. The economic impact in Yorkshire, which is measured through a special survey done after the event by the British government, was $160 million direct impact in Yorkshire, spent on hospitality, food, public transport, etc. The cultural festival generated $11 million, the business festival $4.2 million, and satisfaction ratings were just enormous, especially amongst the local population. The long-term legacy is really what they were most interested in. Was this just going to be a one-off event with limited impact, or is it generally going to change the image of Yorkshire for the future? Is it going to give a real long-term boost to the Yorkshire tourist industry? So all the survey results were extremely positive. Of the visitors, 500,000 visitors returned to Yorkshire within 3 months of the end of the event. 800,000 spectators strongly agreed when they were surveyed that they would recommend Yorkshire as a place to visit to their friends. The organisers of the Tour de France have signed a contract to organise professional cycle races in Yorkshire for the next 5 years, so the spotlight will be on Yorkshire for at least 5 more years. Investment in cycling facilities in Yorkshire has been huge. They're building a new velodrome. They're upgrading some of the main roads so that people can use them as cycling roadways right round the year. One of the things that cycling people like to do now, of course, is to follow the Tour de France route. So if you go up, drive some of those roads, you'll always find cyclists following along. And the profile of Yorkshire has been fantastically enhanced all around the world. One of the things that was unforeseeable but undoubtedly contributed enormously to the success was the weather, because Yorkshire is not known as a place where the sun shines very often. On the 2 days of the race, the weather was absolutely fantastic, so it showed off the county in its best light. It's a very beautiful county if you ever think of going to the UK and you want to see something different from London, Oxford and Cambridge. And one of the amusing things was that all the residents joined in very wholeheartedly with the whole spirit of the event. And for example, farmers painted their sheep in different colours, like yellow. The leader of the Tour de France always wears a yellow jersey. So some of them painted their sheep in yellow. Others, the cafe owner at the top left, he painted the front of his cafe just for the event in those red dots. The red dot shirt is another shirt, I think, for the King of the Mountains in the Tour de France. And you see on the right all the people there on the roadside. It really was, from the point of view of the event organisers, it really went as well as they could possibly have expected. So just to conclude with what I think are some key lessons from these 2 examples in Kerala and Yorkshire, what are 7 essential requirements for success in diversifying one's product base? First of all, a very clear vision based on detailed research. It must be based on research and not just on gut instinct or on some sort of feeling. Secondly, products that are targeted at clearly identified markets. It's not a good idea to spend a lot of money building very expensive new products and then start looking for markets for the product afterwards. Thirdly, one clear characteristic that emerged from these 2 cases is It helps enormously if there is a strong champion, a strong leader to push forward a major strategy change like this. Equally important is to have the engagement and the enthusiastic support of as many stakeholders as possible, draw them into marketing partnerships, and to consult them on regulations, make them feel involved, because the more people who feel involved, the more of a bandwagon will develop, the more enthusiasm will be generated. It goes without saying that political and financial support from the local government is absolutely essential. And if you're going to do something like this, employ experts to do the different tasks that are required. Don't try to ask someone to do something which they have no previous experience of doing. And finally, to achieve a major change, you need a really bold vision and a can-do attitude. That goes without question. These final photos, you'll see it helped enormously with the publicity that the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge started the race. And in the UK, I think, now that we've had a fantastically successful Olympics, a great Commonwealth Games in Glasgow, and this Tour de France, people have great faith and optimism in taking on these major events, which can make an enormous difference if they're well organized. Thank you very much for listening. I'm sorry I had a little problem reading my notes, but thank you, and I'd be very happy to take any questions. Thank you.
الهيئة العامة للسياحة والآثار. ملتقى السفر والاستثمار السياحي.